September 2006. Uri Levine is sitting in his car with his wife and 4 kids, stuck at the tail end of a family convoy, heading home from vacation. 10 cars total, all leaving this same tiny town in northern Israel, all trying to get back to Tel Aviv, and everyone's asking the same question: which route should we take? Highway 1 or Highway 2? And in 2006, there was no way to know. No real-time traffic data, no apps. It was basically a coin flip with your time and sanity on the line. But then Levine had a thought. If only someone ahead of us could tell us which roads were jammed. And then it hit him. Someone was ahead of them. 9 cars full of family members, all driving home on different routes. So he started calling them up. How's traffic on your route? Any jams? That phone call? That was the moment Waze was born, the app that Google would later acquire for $1.15 billion. I'm Lei, and today on Bullish Books, we're diving into Uri Levine's book, Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. And I'm going to show you why most entrepreneurs are asking the wrong question from day one, and how that single mistake is why 75% of venture-backed startups fail. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why your problem is more important than your solution always. Let's get into it. Here's a question I want you to think about. Why do you want to start your own business? And be honest with yourself. Is it to make more money? To escape your soul-crushing job? To achieve financial freedom? Maybe to help people? Here's what Uri Levine wants you to know. If your answer begins with I want or I need, you've already lost the game. Because here's the thing, this isn't just motivational fluff from a guy who got lucky once. Levine has launched multiple successful startups, and every single one began the same way, with a frustration he couldn't shake and a problem worth solving. Let me go back to that Waze story for a second, because it perfectly illustrates what falling in love with a problem actually looks like. Notice what Levine didn't do in that moment. He didn't say, I want to build a cool navigation app. He didn't start with the technology. He didn't think about features or user interfaces. He started with a problem that made him want to punch his steering wheel. Traffic jams waste your time, and nobody tells you about them in advance. That frustration, that specific pain point, became the foundation of a billion-dollar company. Now, here's where most entrepreneurs go wrong. They find a problem and immediately start building. But Levine introduces something he calls the qualification matrix, a framework for determining whether your problem is actually worth the years of your life you're about to sacrifice. And the first question is simple but brutal. Is it a big problem? Start by asking yourself, is this a problem that, if solved, will make the world significantly better? If the answer is just you, if you're the only person on the planet with this issue, Levine jokes that it would be much cheaper to consult a therapist. But if many people have this problem, now you're onto something. And once you've identified that it's not just you, go talk to those people. Understand their perception of the problem. Don't assume everyone experiences it the same way you do. Because as individuals, we're what Levine calls a sample of one. We can't know how widespread or urgent a problem truly is until we hear it described by multiple people from different angles. Here's the difference between companies that succeed and companies that burn through millions before disappearing. Companies that fall in love with problems tell stories that start with, we solve the problem of, or we help these specific people avoid this specific pain. Companies that fall in love with solutions, their stories start with, my company does, or our technology. Spot the difference. One is about the user, the other is about you. Levine started Fairfly because he hated leaving money on the table when airfare prices dropped after he'd purchased tickets. He started Pontera because he felt he was paying ridiculous fees on his retirement savings. He started NG because visiting mechanics made him feel like an idiot who was being ripped off. Every single startup began with his frustration, validated by talking to others who shared it, and turned into a solution only after the problem was crystal clear. Now, before we go any further, let's get brutally honest about what you're actually signing up for when you start a company. Most people imagine the startup journey as this smooth upward trajectory. Launch, traction, growth, success, exit. clean, linear, great Instagram content, right? Wrong. Ben Horowitz, one of Silicon Valley's most successful venture capitalists and former CEO of Opsware, was once asked, "Did you sleep well at night being CEO of a startup?" His answer? "Oh yes, I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 hours and cried." The real journey is a roller coaster of failures, constant ups and downs. So frequent that Levine says if you don't like extreme sports, maybe startups aren't for you. Building a startup is fundamentally a journey of failures, not occasional setbacks, constant failure. Your job as a founder is to fail faster than your competitors so you can find what works before your funding runs out. Thomas Edison said it best, "I have not failed 700 times. I have not failed once. I have succeeded in proving that those 700 ways will not work." The entrepreneurs who succeed embrace this reality. They don't fear failure. They systematically test assumptions, discard what doesn't work, and iterate until they discover the solution that creates actual value. And here's the key. They fall in love with solving problems, not building solutions, because that's what carries them through the inevitable failures. When you're obsessed with eliminating traffic jams because you've wasted hundreds of hours in them, you don't quit after the 50th failed experiment. You find another way. So how do you actually build a successful startup? Levine introduces a framework he calls operating in phases, and this is game-changing. Most entrepreneurs build business plans that go something like year 1, launch, year 2, 10,000 users, year 3, 100,000 users, year 4, 10 million in revenue, year 5, unicorn status. It's complete fiction. Here's the reality. Successful startups go through distinct phases, each requiring about 2 to 3 years and a completely different focus. At any given time, your startup has exactly one MIT, one most important thing that determines whether you live or die. During each phase, the MIT changes, and when it changes, everything changes. Your priorities, which team members are critical, how you spend money, what success looks like. Think of it like driving a manual transmission car. If you don't depress the clutch when shifting gears, the gearbox screams in protest. Same with startups. When you shift phases, you need to readjust everything. Let's talk about phase 1, product market fit, or PMF. This is the make or break phase. If you figure out PMF, you get to live. If you don't, you will die. PMF isn't optional. It's literally the difference between your startup existing in 2 years or disappearing into the graveyard of failed companies that never achieved it. So what does PMF actually look like? Think about all the apps you use every day. Google, WhatsApp, Uber, Netflix, Facebook. Do you use them differently today than the first time you used them? Number. You search on Google today the same way you searched 20 years ago. You use Waze the same way you did the first time. Once you figure out PMF, your product's core value proposition doesn't change anymore. The back end might evolve, the business model gets added, scalability requires development, but the fundamental value creation remains the same. And here's what nobody tells you. This takes time. Waze took 3.5 years to find PMF. Microsoft took 5 years. Netflix took 10 years. 10 years. And how do you measure PMF? With one metric, retention, not downloads, not signups. Are users coming back? That's the only question that matters. If users try your product once and never return, you don't have PMF, no matter how impressive your download numbers look. Levine has this model he calls the PMF funnel. Conversion, what percentage of people who hear about your product try it? First-time value, do users experience value in their first session? Retention, do they come back? And frequency, how often do they use it? If any of these metrics are broken, you don't have PMF. And here's a crucial insight. If a user doesn't use your product 3 times, they will never be retained. Why 3? First use, curiosity made them try. Second use, testing whether the first experience was real. Third use, forming a habit. The road to PMF is iterative. Build a feature, test with users, measure retention. Did it work? Number, remove or change it. Repeat. The faster you fail, the more experiments you can run within your budget and timeline. During the PMF phase, and listen carefully to this, focus all efforts on creating value for users. Keep your organization lean. Small team, small budget. Every line of code should improve retention. Don't hire VPs of marketing or business development yet. They'll bring users to a product that's not ready. This phase typically takes 2 to 4 years before you can move to the next phase. Once you nail PMF, phase 2 is figuring out your business model. Once you're creating value, you need to figure out how to capture some of that value as revenue. Will you charge users directly, sell data to third parties, sell advertising, subscription or one-time fee? This typically takes another 2 to 3 years of experimentation. And here's Levine's formula. If you create value X, you should capture 10 to 25% of X as revenue. Why only 10 to 25%? Because if you try to capture more, customers will feel ripped off. If you capture less, you're not building a sustainable business. Then comes phase 3, growth and scale. Now that you have PMF and a business model, how do you acquire users at scale? This is where marketing becomes critical. Your chief marketing officer suddenly becomes your most important hire, and growth is incredibly hard to figure out. Most startups that achieve PMF and a business model still fail to crack growth. Here's one of the most dangerous assumptions entrepreneurs make. Users think like I do. They don't. As individuals, we're excellent samples of exactly one person, ourselves. We can't possibly understand how different users experience problems or products unless we watch them. And this brings us to the 3 customer types you need to understand. First, innovators. These are 2 to 3% of users who try anything new just because it's new. They'll deal with bugs, weird settings, unclear value propositions. They're essentially beta testers who volunteered without knowing it. Second, early adopters. These are 13 to 15% of users who will use your product even though it's new because they understand the value it provides. They're not afraid of change. They'll overcome most issues on their own and give you feedback. And here's the thing. Most entrepreneurs, including you if you're listening to this, fall into this category. And that's the problem. Third, the early majority. This is 34% of users and your biggest market and your biggest challenge. The early majority are afraid of change. Their state of mind is, don't rock the boat. Before downloading your app, they were fine. If they don't use your app, they'll still be fine. If something doesn't work perfectly, they'll abandon it immediately. They won't explore settings. They won't Google solutions to problems. They won't ask for help because they don't want to look stupid. They hate when you release new versions with changes. The early majority will quit faster than you think. So what do you do about this? You need to watch users, not ask them. When Waze built their app, they included a map chat feature where drivers could upload pictures and report anything. They thought it would be for reporting hazards or asking for directions. What actually happened? Ticket scalpers started using it to advertise. I have 2 tickets for sale with photos. Illegal dealers used it. I have good stuff to sell. Moving locations after each transaction. Users will find far more creative uses for your features than you ever imagined. You can't predict behavior, you can only observe it. Here's how to design for the early majority. Simple equals less. Remove features, not add them. Every additional button or option increases friction. Nobody reads anything, not manuals, not instructions, not in-app messages. If your app requires reading to understand, the early majority will quit. Watch first-time users constantly. You can only experience something for the first time once. The only way to understand that experience is to watch someone who's never seen your product before and make the first experience like a first kiss. Your product should strike first-time users deeply and emotionally. If they forget their first experience with your app, you've failed. Let me talk quickly about growth strategies, because once you have PMF and a business model, you need to scale. There are 4 main ways to attract customers. Word of mouth, the holy grail. Users are so enthusiastic they tell everyone. It's organic and essentially free, but you can't manufacture it. You can only create conditions for it by building something truly remarkable. Viral growth is different. Viral means the product spreads through usage itself. Facebook is viral. When you sign up, you invite your friends who sign up and invite their friends. The key metric is the viral coefficient. How many new users does each current user bring? If it's less than 1, you'll eventually plateau. Greater than 1, you'll grow exponentially. Paid acquisition is online ads, TV commercials, billboards, any channel where you pay to bring in users. This is measurable and scalable, but expensive. The key metric is CAC, customer acquisition cost. Start small. Test channels at low volume. Optimize what works, scale what shows positive ROI. And then there's PR. Contrary to startup founder dreams, PR is rarely a silver bullet for user growth. But PR is critical for establishing credibility. When people Google you and find multiple media publications instead of just your website, it completely changes perception. You'll need a PR firm. Don't try to DIY this. Relationships with journalists and media groups are everything. Before I wrap up, let me give you the formula that determines whether your business model actually works. Your business model must pass this test. LTV, lifetime value, divided by CAC, customer acquisition cost, must be greater than 3. If the lifetime value of a customer isn't at least 3 times what it costs to acquire them, you don't have a sustainable business model. Let's say your subscription is $5 a month and the average customer stays 4 months. That's an LTV of $20. If CAC is $50, you're losing money on every customer. If CAC is $5, you're in great shape and should invest heavily in acquisition. This formula tells you whether to pour fuel on the growth fire or go back to the drawing board. So let's circle back to where we started. Why do you want to start a business? If your answer begins with I, you're starting from the wrong place. The most successful startups begin with a problem that makes the founder so frustrated they can't not solve it. A problem that affects millions of people. A problem that, if solved, makes the world meaningfully better. The path from traffic jam to billion-dollar exit isn't smooth. Ben Horowitz slept like a baby, waking up every 2 hours crying. But the founders who fell in love with problems really fell in love. The kind of love that survives 100 no's from investors, countless pivots, and years of uncertainty. Those founders changed industries. They didn't build startups because they wanted financial freedom, though they got it. They built startups because they couldn't stand traffic jams, overpriced retirement fees, inefficient public transportation, or any of the other 1,000 frustrations that make modern life harder than it should be. So here's what I want you to do. Find your problem, the one that makes you angry, the one that keeps you up at night, the one that affects millions of people who've just accepted it as the way things are. Fall in love with that problem. Then build the solution that makes it disappear. If you want to dive deeper into the frameworks we covered today, the qualification matrix, the phases of startup development, understanding your customer types, all of it, head over to bullishbooks.com, where you can read the full article with all the visual frameworks and detailed examples. And if you're working on a startup right now, I'd love to hear what problem you're solving. Leave a comment and let's talk about it. Until next time, stay bullish.